Estrid receives a notification that Knute and Wolf are engaging in combat outside. Several men watch and are impressed with Knute's agility while wearing full armor. Estrid inquires with her servant whether they are using real swords, which the servant confirms. This causes Estrid to worry about potential injuries. Gunnar appears and greets Estrid, remarking on the beautiful day. Estrid questions how he can find the scene before them beautiful, to which Gunnar responds that it may not be suitable for a lady to watch. He reassures her that Wolf is highly skilled in taking precautions not to harm Knute. Estrid notes that Knute used to have an aversion to sword fighting, but Gunnar explains that his royal blood was awakened during his time in England and that kings must show their strength and authority to their subjects. Despite this, Estrid is concerned for her brother, who appears to be in pain. Wolf admits to Knute that when he's fatigued, he has a tendency to retreat during a fight. However, he acknowledges that doing so would only tire him more and prolong the battle. He emphasizes the importance of his swordsmanship, noting that his style will be scrutinized by both his enemies and his people. Knute agrees, mentioning that Estrid is watching their fight closely, causing him to be more precise in his attacks. Wolf refuses to be fooled by Knute's comments again and Knute responds by telling him to forget it. He insists that Estrid is not paying attention to them and is instead engaged in conversation with the man beside her. Wolf turns to look and is caught off guard as Knute hits him with his shield, holding his sword to Wolf's throat. Wolf concedes, and Knute throws his sword, removing his armor. Gunnar approaches him and informs him that the investigative report he had requested has been completed. He adds that he needs to share further details with him in a private place. Once alone, Gunnar hands Knute some papers and tells him about the wealthy people residing in the area. Gunnar mentions that even if they were to confiscate their entire annual income, they would only collect around £3,000, which is not enough. He suggests that the only option left is to raise taxes, and he specifically points out Kettle, son of Sverkel, a wealthy farmer with vast land holdings in the south. However, Knute notes that the report lacks information regarding the number of soldiers employed by each family listed. Gunnar acknowledges this and says that they will have to visit their estates to gather the missing information. Knute emphasizes that he needs the numbers as soon as possible. Gunnar warns that imposing new taxes soon after his coronation could trigger a revolt by the Danes. Knute assures him that politics is all about foreseeing and counteracting such dangers, and that there is another solution to their problem. After his coronation as King of England, Knute stationed his Danish troops in his newly acquired territories. However, the added taxes imposed to maintain the garrison caused a surge of complaints from the English. Knute would have to decrease the size of his army if he could not find a way to raise funds. When Knute explains to Gunnar his solution to increase his personal land holdings, Gunnar points out that it would take time to generate revenue from it. Knute dismisses this concern and suggests that he will do it in another way. Gunnar is taken aback when he realizes Knute means to seize land from his own subjects. Knute argues that it would be wiser to sacrifice a few wealthy families rather than cause discontent by raising taxes throughout the kingdom. When Gunnar suggests reducing the size of their army, Knute rejects the idea, explaining that he needs an army to govern as he cannot trust the English as a foreign conqueror. Knute stresses that a king's power is determined by his sword, and without an army, he cannot achieve anything significant. Thorgil informs Kettle at the harbor outside Jelling that King Harald passed away more than a week ago and that his funeral has already taken place. Kettle deduces that the king must have died before he left his farm, which implies he was in worse health than Kettle originally thought. He had brought 3 nars full of gifts to wish for his recovery. Kettle realizes that Thorgil's welcoming him to Jelling means that Knute is there. Thorgil confirms this and tells him that Knute is presently staying in the palace and acting as the king. Kettle understands that he should establish a good relationship with Knute, the likely new king of Denmark, now that his supporter King Harald has passed. He requests Thorgil to put in a good word for him. Thorgil agrees, impressed with his resourcefulness, and states that it should be easy with all the gifts Kettle has brought. When Kettle calls out for Omar, one of his men tells him that he left for the town a little while ago. Kettle is irritated that the man let him go and expresses concern that his 20-year-old son Omar is still acting like a child. He fears that Omar might have already gotten into trouble after getting into an argument with someone in town. Amidst the bustling town, Omar confronts a man who accidentally bumped into him. Omar insists that the man should apologize since it was his fault. However, the man blames Omar for ruining his valuable textiles, to which Omar refuses to be held responsible. The man demands compensation for the damages, but Omar sees through his scheme and accuses him of being a con artist. The man insults Omar's sanity and questions his upbringing, citing his father's reputation as a respected merchant. Omar challenges the man to start a fight, but the man backs down and prepares to strike Omar instead. In response, Omar draws his sword and accuses the man of cowardice. The man protests that it's not a fair fight, but Omar stands his ground. Omar emphasizes that true courage involves taking risks and being willing to fight with conviction. He points out that the man's lack of a weapon indicates his lack of commitment to the warrior spirit of the Nordic people. Just then, Kettle arrives and confronts Omar, asking who gave him his sense of self-righteousness. Kettle berates Omar for always stirring up trouble, and decides to take responsibility for Omar's behavior. He approaches the angry man and apologizes on Omar's behalf, then offers him a purse of coins as compensation for the ruined textiles. The man accepts the money, but his own father appears and scolds him for accepting it, insisting that he give Kettle the change back. The father reveals that he had been observing the quarrel from the beginning, and concludes that his son is not yet mature enough to handle larger business dealings. The man apologizes for his son's behavior and introduces himself as Leif Eriksson. Kettle and Omar are seated with Leif and his son, who introduces himself as Thorfinn, also known as Bug Eyes. Leif explains how he came to adopt Thorfinn, revealing that it was through a series of unlikely events. When Kettle mentions that a man named Thorfinn works on his farm, Leif asks if he is a slave, to which Kettle confirms. Despite not having mentioned Thorfinn's status earlier, Kettle is surprised that Leif was able to guess it. Leif goes on to describe Thorfinn, asking if he is a blonde-haired and brown-eyed Nord, approximately the same age as Bug Eyes and from Iceland. While Kettle cannot confirm if Thorfinn was a warrior, he notes that the man has several scars on his body. Bug Eyes expresses concern that Leif might be getting his hopes up, as this could be a repeat of their situation. However, Leif is optimistic that Kettle's descriptions match the Thorfinn he has been searching for, revealing that he is the son of his late friend, who was sold into slavery many years ago. Leif and Bug Eyes make their way back to Leif's Nar, where Leif tells moles that they have to make a detour to Kettle's farm located in the southern region of Jutland. Moles expresses surprise at the request, questioning the distance of the detour. Leif defends it by saying it's not too far and that Kettle assured them they could follow his ship. When Moles asks how far it is to Kettle's farm, Leif replies that it would take 5 days in good conditions. Moles becomes angry, pointing out that it's not just a small detour, as it will disrupt their schedule by 10 days. Leif insists that this time it's different and that he believes the Thorfinn at Kettle's farm is the one they're looking for. However, Moles warns Leif that it's already autumn and the Greenland Sea may freeze over, causing problems if they were to encounter bad weather. Moles tells Leif that they can't afford to waste time on a wild goose chase. On the following day, Kettle is surprised to receive an audience with King Knute so quickly, having just arrived the previous day. He and his sons await the audience with Thorgil, commenting on his unexpected influence with the king. Thorgil is also surprised and suggests that the king may have been pleased with Kettle's high-quality gifts. Kettle agrees that good business dealings can be quite profitable. They are summoned for the audience and Kettle reminds Omar to behave appropriately. Upon entering, they kneel before Knute, and Kettle greets him with a smile. Knute praises the quality of Kettle's gifts and expresses his gratitude for receiving them. Kettle confirms that everything he gifted was grown on his farm, and shares that King Harald had enjoyed their pigs for Yule every year. Knute acknowledges his late father and brother's good dealings with Kettle's farm and intends to maintain that relationship, as prosperous farms are valuable in Denmark. Kettle thanks him for his kind words. Omar suddenly rises from his seat, causing Gunnar to remind him of his manners in the presence of the king and urging him to kneel back down. With no idea of what Omar is doing, Kettle apologizes for his son's behavior. However, Omar continues to stand and boldly requests to be enlisted in the army of King Knute, preferably alongside his brother Thorgil. He unsheathes his sword and declares that he is trained for this day and will prove his worth. Kettle tries to restrain Omar, calling him a fool and reminding him of the danger of drawing a weapon in front of a king. Omar, however, yells at his father, insisting that he wants to become a warrior and not spend his life working on a farm. Gunnar looks to King Knute for direction on how to proceed. Knute, looking uninterested, agrees to let Omar demonstrate his skills. Knute has a pig set out on a table in front of Omar and tells him that it is to be his troops' dinner. He instructs Omar to think of it as an enemy warrior and to show him how well he can hack it down. Omar confidently asserts that he will slice the pig with a single stroke, but his attempts are a humiliating failure. He struggles to make any progress, and his swings barely leave a mark on the pig's flesh. Omar complains that the bones are too hard, while Kettle cringes with embarrassment and Thorgil and Wolf look on in shock. Knute stands up and declares that he will discuss Omar's request with his division leaders. He invites the family to stay in the castle until a decision is reached. After retiring to their room, Kettle immediately falls asleep, muttering about his foolish son. Later, Thorgil confronts Omar and warns him that his behavior has made the entire family look bad. He advises Omar to avoid doing anything else that might bring shame upon their name. Wolf meets with Knute in his study and informs him that Omar is not fit to be a regular soldier due to his lack of skills and overestimation of his worth. Knute agrees with Wolf's assessment and shifts the conversation to another matter. Wolf agrees to the plan and Knute mentions that the brash Nordic personality will be easy to manipulate. He then reminds Wolf of their previous discussion and says that it's time to take action, despite it being a bit early. Knute explains that they cannot afford to miss this opportunity and reveals that their first target will be Kettle. He acknowledges Kettle's kindness and good intentions, but believes that sacrifices must be made for the greater good and the stability of the people.